Hello, my name is Associate Professor Ian Hay. I'm the Director of Professional Learning and Engagement at Macquarie School of Education, Macquarie University, Sydney, Australia. I'm also the Chair of IPDA Australia. We're a relatively new addition to the IPDA family, and this year we have taken the opportunity to present a kick-off session where we had a colleague, Dr. Kim Wilson, present really interesting research around what does quality and impactful professional learning look like. This year's theme holds a particular interest for me around those marginalised voices that professional development can support in coming to the fore. Of particular interest to me are early career teachers, those that are transitioning from their initial teacher education programs into the profession. Often this group is looked upon as novice and that their professional learning journey generally doesn't commence until they have graduated from a program. I think that this is something that we need to investigate further in the sense of engaging our pre-service teachers in the professional learning journey while they're doing their course, so that when they do graduate, that transition is smooth into the profession and they've already established a professional development portfolio, but also identifying those areas that need further development as they move towards their own classroom experiences. In Australia, we have a particular interest in supporting the students to transition into the profession, and we work closely with education authorities as well as employers in supporting that work, but often the early career teachers themselves are silent in the conversation. I'd like to see those individuals or that group become more vocal, I suppose, but also engaged in understanding the importance of professional development from their pre-service to their in-service context.
Croeso, welcome to IPDA Cymru. Here in Wales, this year's conference theme resonates in a variety of ways. There are implications for all pandemic cohorts in diverse educational contexts. Our learners, children, pupils and adults, our ITE students and those training to become education professionals, our early career professionals and teachers and teaching assistants, our experienced staff, our leaders, and also importantly, those without regular contracts within educational contexts who work on supply. Within all these groups, the pandemic has exacerbated existing inequalities and inequities, as well as creating many new individual and diverse nuanced inequalities. For example, for key workers and their children, those without access to technology, those in Wales living in post-industrial and rural communities, and English as an additional language families or those new to English. At the same time, in Wales, the pandemic has perhaps surprisingly created different and positive professional learning experiences, online and blended, more accessible, not requiring being situated in one or specific localities, more opportunities for boundary crossing, often with practitioners from different contexts and different countries engaging together. But the legacy of inequalities and inequities from COVID-19 are set to run in Wales. And so sustained recovery requires us all to deeply reflect and really listen in order to meet our colleagues and learners where they are.
Hi everyone, my name is Paul Campbell. I'm Chair of IPDA Hong Kong and Vice Chair of IPDA, and I'm delighted to share with you some perspectives from both Hong Kong and the IPDA Hong Kong Committee. Now, as we continue to make sense of how our world has and how it continues to change at a speed that's been almost unimaginable, not only are we forced to rethink how we understand learning, education, and development across professions, we have complex collective sense-making processes that are required of us. If we're to continue to learn, to grow, make advancements that are enabled through professional learning and education, we need to confront the too often marginalised voices in contemporary times, and through practice, policy, and research, reimagine how we address inequities. In Hong Kong, after ongoing periods of disruption, change, and uncertainty over the past few years, new possibilities are on the horizon to begin to illuminate and imagine how we make sense of the complexity that characterises our context for learning and for growth. With such a diverse community of professionals with an interest in learning and development, our challenge in Hong Kong now is how we come together to collaborate and do so with a focus on equity, inclusion, and the varied and significant intersectionality and lived realities, identities, and cultures that characterise our professional communities and society in Hong Kong. I think space remains to continue the collaboration that has resulted from our newly developed hybrid models, and I guess the breaking down of traditional barriers to engagement and dialogue within and across professions that we've seen as a result of the pandemic. But as we commence IPDA 2021, IPDA Hong Kong, that represents academics and practitioners from across Hong Kong and mainland China, we're excited by the possibilities to connect, to share, to record, to extend ideas and insights in order to reimagine a sustainable future for learning and practice across professions in Hong Kong and beyond.
Hello colleagues, I am Professor Balwant Singh, Chairperson of IPDA India Association established in 2013, and we have 43 members for the year 2021. My views about how the theme marginalized voices in contemporary times has played out from an Indian perspective. Modern India stands as one of the most diverse countries in the world, a subcontinent that is home to over 100 languages, over 700 different tribes, and a majority of the religions. The country's secular and pluralistic approach since its inception has arguably helped India being to realize a diversity dividend. Education is a strong tool to handle this gap and to bring equity and diversity. India now has a new education policy 2020. The first which include the commitment to recognize, identify, and foster the unique capabilities of each student, respect for diversity and local context, commitment to equity. It has a more holistic view of inclusive education. Thus, the emphasis on equity is welcome. Moreover, COVID-19 introduced a new type of inequality, digital divide. We need stronger infrastructure to provide uninterrupted internet connections and electronic devices to students if we are to narrow this digital divide. Learning from other countries can be useful, and similar initiatives can be taken depending on the state capacity and collaboration with private service providers. I look forward to working with all of you and hope that we all will have a wonderful conference.
Our recent Twitter slow chat and reflective dialogue with teacher educators discussing the conference strands uncovered more questions than answers. The PDST assert that there has been a shift, placing a focus on critical reflections in professional learning, starting with the self and uncovering assumptions we bring to the table. Trust, authenticity, and integrity are key to addressing inequities. The NCSE have developed an inclusive education framework, which moves the inclusive lens from purely disability to a holistic approach, where schools examine the quality of their inclusive practices through self-reflection. Leaders are in a powerful position to mediate the correct inclusive environment through modelling. The CSL support leadership in ensuring both culture and the learning environment is inclusive for and of all staff. The NCCA's education officer with responsibility for traveller culture and history asked, how can we better prepare teachers for working with marginalised groups? Teacher educators, who are members of marginalised groups, ask why the balance of responsibility for inclusion lies with them. When is it everyone's responsibility? Professional learning opportunities must be contextualised for all. For example, for those working in the prison service, a space where many marginalised voices of society can be found. How can we include learners, especially marginalised learners, in co-designing contextual and relevant professional learning?
I am Professor Nabil Jondi, the chair of the new IPDA Regional Association. Let me highlight how important it is to participate in IPDA 2021 conference. As IPDA Palestine has been recently launched, the contribution of the Palestinian researchers in the IPDA annual conference will provide a platform for elevating marginalized voices. Given the difficult context in Palestine, where developing educational research needs further development and more consideration. This conference brings researchers, educators, and other groups worldwide to present their papers on professional development. This will help Palestinian researchers and educators to address vivid research topics, especially coping with the challenges of education in Palestine pertaining to COVID-19 pandemic. IPDA conference provides an opportunity for Palestinian educators and professionals to share knowledge, research findings, and educational practices with international researchers. This helps them gain a transformative professional experience. Also, this widens the horizon of the Palestinian scholars to get insight into what's going on regarding teacher professional development. Kindly do contact me if you are interested in professional learning and development in Palestinian context.
My name is Katrina Oates and I am chair of Scotland's IPDA Association. Our committee is composed of myself and colleague Linda Bell, and we are from the University of the West of Scotland. Our vice chair is Susie Dick, who's in Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh. Dr. John Minott is our digital lead, and he's in Aberdeen, and Professor Aileen Kennedy is from the University of Strathclyde. Our work this year has reflected the conference theme of marginalised voices in professional learning in a range of ways. For example, our podcast series has addressed the themes of racism and social justice in my conversation with Barbara Becknell, a US filmmaker and activist now studying at Edinburgh University. Beginning teachers' experiences in the pandemic were highlighted in John's discussion with Rachel Shanks and Mark Carver, and Susie Dick explored the opportunities and challenges of leadership and professional learning in rural networks in Scotland with head teachers Peter Bain, Stuart McPhail, Vim Chalmett and Lee Dunn, who's head of Scotland's Digital Academy. We've also sought to highlight voices from within our own community through our journal club, which promotes any Scottish-based author who has published in either of IPDA's in-house journals, PDIE or Practice. We have an open event on Tuesday, 16th of November on Richard Holmes's Practice Journal on Grassroots CPD. We're a small association, but we'd be delighted to welcome any new members. So if you're interested in finding out more about us and joining our association, contributing to our programme, or maybe helping with the committee, please do get in touch.
My name is Phil Pokert. I'm the director of the University of Florida's Lastinger Center for Learning, and I'm also the inaugural chair of the IPDA USA Regional Association. I'm proud to bring greetings on behalf of the rest of the inaugural planning committee with representatives from the great states of New York, California, and Kansas. We've been asked to speak about how the theme, marginalized voices in contemporary times, has played out from a US national perspective. In truth, it's very difficult to speak about anything from a national perspective in the United States in regards to education, because programming and policy can dramatically differ from state to state. That said, recent experience, especially over the last 18 to 20 months, has brought about a few key themes in terms of how to address inequity moving forward. One of the things that our group has really united around is the use of technology to be able to address inequities. We really see the opportunity that the increased proliferation and use of technology within learning settings has brought to the table. It allows us to get better connected to the students, teachers, schools, and communities that we serve. For example, our own center has engaged in at least 2 listening tours where we've been able to reach out directly to students and schools to understand how best to meet their needs moving forward. And we've been able to be very inclusive in the voices that were brought to those listening tours in order to understand and hear directly from those that we intend to serve with our efforts through professional learning and education. So that has been huge in terms of our ability to access and be more inclusive in giving voice to the historically marginalized communities that school systems and professional learning systems are yet to adequately serve. That said, it's also brought to light and exacerbated some of the access issues as well, because the digital divide, meaning those who don't have access to technology readily, don't have access to broadband connectivity in the United States, sadly fall further and further behind. So while we see great promise, we also see some dangers and risks in terms of the increased use of technology in order to be able to address these issues. And that's something that the USA Regional Association intends to explore through its convenings. We look forward to working with all of you, and we hope that we have a wonderful annual meeting.